Good afternoon, everyone. The Institute of Arts Department of Language and Literature brings you to our webinar entitled Publishing Your Paper in a Reputable Journal. I'm Jiren, your moderator for today. Before we start, allow me to read the webinar guidelines. We are streaming live on FEU Facebook page. Always be on time, dress appropriately. A webinar is a formal engagement in an online setting. Check your Wi-Fi connection before joining the webinar or online training. Use appropriate equipment for the webinar. When using a mobile phone, use a headset to reduce the noise that they pick on your location. Avoid using the speakerphone. Put your phone on silent or airplane mode and avoid taking a call while the webinar is ongoing. Use the mute button to prevent the unnecessary noise that will disrupt the program. Release the unmute button when it's time for you to speak or during the question and answer forum. If you have any questions, you can just drop your questions on our Zoom chat box and Facebook comment box. When asking a question, state your name and your affiliation first before throwing in your questions. Also, speak with clarity. Be courteous and do not engage in a chat with others while the webinar is ongoing. The organizers reserves its right to disengage anyone from the webinar who will not follow the guidelines. We also would like to acknowledge our Dean of the Institute of Arts and Sciences, Rowena Capulong Reyes, and our Associate Dean, Mark Isla. We would like to thank our invited guests, Aureliano University, Cagayan National High School, Tuguegarao City, City of Malabon University, Kupang Senior High School, Dalig National High School, De La Salle University Integrated School, De La Salle University Manila, La Salle College Antipolo, Lakewood School of Alabang, Mabalakad City College, Mapua University, Muntinlupa National High School, Muntinlupa Science High School, National University Nazareth School, Nueva Ecija University of Science and Technology, Poblacion National High School, Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Rizal Technological University, Romblon State University, Rosario National High School, Sapang Palay National High School, Southwestern University, St. Bridget College, Batangas, Santa Lucia High School, Santa Teresa College, University of Santo Tomas, Manila, New Era University, Martinez Memorial College. I also would like to invite you to check our department programs and offerings. Bachelor of Arts in Language and Literature Studies is a 4-year undergraduate program which aims to produce globally competitive and highly principled graduates and leaders who are lifelong learners, problem solvers, effective communicators, and community oriented. So we have two tracks: Bachelor of Arts in Language and Literature Studies, English track, and Literature track. Both tracks are PACOCOA Level 2 accredited. We also offer Master of Arts in Letters program for our graduate school, and soon the Master of Arts in Language and Literature. Currently, we are offering 3 modes of learning: asynchronous online learning, mixed online learning, total analog learning. And for your increase and application, please contact our Department Chair of the Department of Language and Literature, Dr. Emmanuel Gonzalez, PhD. You can also email us on lls@feu.edu.ph and visit our Facebook page, FEU Language and Literature, or FEU Language Literature. It is always important to consider the publication and its impact to the society. Publishing in a good peer-reviewed journal is the ultimate goal for most research projects. To formally start the event, I'd like to invite our department chair, Department of the Language and Literature, Dr. Emmanuel Gonzalez, for opening remarks.
Thank you, Juren. In behalf of our Dean, Dr. Rowena Capulong Reyes, and me as associating Mark Isla. Welcome all, and thanks for joining today's webinar. It's focused on publishing your paper in a reputable journal, as the title says. I hope that our discussion today will help us to think not only of what we are doing, but also how we are doing it, so that in the end, we deliver the results that improve our research publication. At the outset, I wish to thank our speaker for today's webinar, Dr. Roberto Javier Jr., for accepting our invitation to share his experiences. I recognize that they have taken time and made the extra effort to make this webinar possible. I also thank our faculty, students, and our staff, Ms. Anne Salaysay, who helped us on this event. In the past few years, our workshops and seminars have focused on strengthening our own capacities in writing research, improving our research methodologies, and ensuring to search and new discoveries and knowledge. All these issues are essential and we must continue to address them. Indeed, we cannot show the momentum we have created with our institute. Yet, we need to do more. We should make every effort to do so. In this context, research and publication complement teaching and training. Publication in a peer-reviewed journals also give international recognition for an individual, department, university, and institution. And seeing on this, I appreciate the effort of some faculty who always see to it that they have publications every year. We must therefore adopt their kind of work on this area of self-development. Let me conclude by saying that I hope that webinar will bring these new insights to publish our research paper. As usual, I'm sure that we will use this webinar to share and exchange our experiences, but at the same time, honestly question our methods of work and yardstick we use to measure success in publishing our research work. I want to wish you all very fruitful discussions, and I look forward to your recommendation at the end of the day. Thank you, and good afternoon to all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Now, to formally introduce our speaker, I'd like to give you Mr. Marco da Silva.
Greetings and a pleasant morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to introduce to you our speaker this afternoon, Dr. Roberto Javier Jr. Dr. Javier is a full professor and the chair of the Department of Psychology in the Department of in the LaSalle University, Manila. He is also a registered psychologist of the Professional Regulation Commission, Republic of the Philippines, a lifetime member of the National Association for Filipino Psychology, a member of the AIDS Society in the Philippines, and the clinical psychologist Dr. Celi Magpantay Clinic in St. Luke's Medical Center, Quezon City. Dr. Javier obtained his PhD in clinical psychology magna cum laude from the University of Santo Tomas and his MA in education, major in psychology, magna cum laude from De La Salle Araneta University. He is also the research fellow in the LSU Social Move Development Research Center. He has produced many valuable and significant research outputs. Among them, our principal studies on the implementation of RA 9994 for the 2010 Expanded Senior Citizens Act 2020 funded by POPCOM, Competencies of Early Childhood Care 2019 funded by UNICEF for the Early Childhood Care and the Development Council of the Philippines, and Health Literacy of the High School Students in the Philippines 2017, and Inclusions of Persons with Exceptionality in the Workplace 2014, both supported by the UNILAB Foundation. Moreover, he has also done health research projects such as HIV program access coverage for key populations, and how the DOH and other interventions close the gap in health outcomes disparities amongst LGUs. His books, published by the De La Salle Publishing House, include Pakikipagkapwa, published last 2020, From Exceptionality to the Exceptional, last 2014, and Seasons in Parenting 2015, which was nominated for the National Book Awards. He is he has also published a multidisciplinary book with Dr. Antonio Contreras and Dr. Dennis Ersaga, entitled Science, Technology, and Society, published last 2018. Now, it is all welcome Dr. Javier for his talk, publishing your paper in a reputable journal.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My task this afternoon is to share with you my experiences as pointed out by the department chair, Dr. Emmanuel Gonzalez, on my publication and how I went through this exercise in the university as an academic and as a scholar. In today's lecture or sharing, I will be giving some tips on how we can possibly publish in reputable journal. In my field, we seek out scientific journals because I'm in the field of psychology. But I also published in local as well as international uh, journals. So I'll be helped out by Miss Anne for the slides to guide us in our discussion this afternoon. So I hope that towards the end, this will be helpful in that it will lead you to publishing your work and that you'll find time to attend to this very important academic activity and our contribution to the advancement of knowledge in our field. So, Ms. Anne, may I have the slides for hello? All right. So thank you, Ms. Anne. Um, as you can see from the slide, we'll have reasons for publishing our paper in a reputable journal. First and foremost, of course, is for us to share and share this knowledge to foster understanding. We dig in to data, and from that we source through the exercise of research accumulated evidence, and that evidence can be useful for applications, for instance, in the practice of a profession. And so that knowledge is important for us to share as our contribution to the field, so that it's our way of sharing what we have gathered from research as support for, say, a theory that can be translated into some professional practice. For instance, in psychology, if we are able to um, determine um, a treatment modality or intervention, then we use it for uh, advancing the tools for helping, such that we know that this can be useful also for other practitioners. For instance, now we're engaged in a research, a kind of intervention research where we are employing techniques of helping through psychological counseling those medical workers in the front line of the fight against COVID-19 infection. So we'd like to find out which of those techniques in counseling would be helpful to prevent the development of mental health problems later to these individuals who have been sacrificing their own health and well-being to help in the um prevention of infection or the spread of infection. So I am part of a research team that does that, and we're working with a Japanese university on this, and another Singapore-based institute to understand how we can prevent the development later of severe mental illness resulting from exposure to high stress brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we hope that this will be published, because this will contribute to our understanding of what is important, a method, a psychological intervention method to help individuals in these conditions. So the second point, of course, is scholarship. In the previous slide, I noted that we also would like others know what we do and how we do it. So when we are to work with a community of scholars, we share with them our ideas, we share with them our thoughts, and we learn from each other on how to go about, for instance, finding a solution to a problem, particularly in our case, a solution to our research problem that may have applications or implications later on. So it also will hone our skills as scholars, because it will task us literally to sit down and write about what we have in mind. Then we'd like to also check on our individual or self-development. It is our way to reflecting on our own ability, our competence, and see if we're acquiring new skills and benefiting from both the interaction we have in the research exercise as we share with others our uh, expertise, our skills, learn from them, they learn from us, so that this goes back to us and our gains as well for our own measurement of achievement. So also we publish because we want that our work is not put to waste. Sayang naman. And that's the relevance of publishing your paper, because it becomes a resource for the academic community. It will become accessible for many. It will go public, if you like, so that more students can use this publication. More faculty will benefit from your work when it gets published. It will not be just lying in the shelf of a library, but it becomes readily available to as many scholars possible when we publish it. So the doorway opens to us all when we know that there is a scholar who shares his work to as many aspiring scholars, aspiring academics, aspiring researchers, or to those who are already engaged in research, in scholarship. So that's the relevance of making your work available and accessible to many. The second point, of course, is that you want to publish because your work is an original one or an innovation in your field of study. For instance, when you started working on your dissertation or your thesis, you spent hours and hours to put up evidence or put up stories, weave them, make sense of them. And you got excited with what you have found in the work. And then you defended it. But after the defense and you got your degree, you would just say, I'm done with it. But that can be published. That paper can be published because initially there is a panel that reviewed your work. If it's a dissertation, you have more people reviewing your work, and the thoroughness in the review process led you to defending your dissertation. And therefore, that must give you some insight into the relevance of your work. Look for the storyline. This will motivate you to put this into something publishable, a work or a manuscript. Then we ask, how do we publish, and then where do we publish? Of course, I know you know that we can publish in those available online. But the question, of course, is this reputable a journal for me to publish? Why is that important a consideration? To publish in a platform that is reputable. One, because the scholars in the field are the ones in that reputable journal and is read by those community or communities of scientists, for instance, of social scientists, of psychologists, of anthropologists, of literary scholars, because that's where they know that the work that they are reading is scholarly. I will talk about that in a little while. And is respected and is relevant and is also valued by the community. Now, there are, of course, other platforms where people can publish, but they may not be of good quality because these are not of a community of scientists or a community of scholars who share the science of their field. For instance, in my field, psychological science. Having said that, it's important that we looked into those platforms that are reputable and we know if these are not predatory. By predatory, I mean these are those that would require scholars, for instance, would like to be published to pay some amount to be published. Or will have demands on the scholars that are not acceptable, unethical. So it's important that you looked at the key abstract indexing databases. So in there I listed can be ISI, as a Scopus or ESCI. And you can check this out online. No? I listed there the source, for instance, on knowing where you can publish your article or your manuscript or your paper. So what are these journals characteristically? They are high quality, peer-reviewed publications. I earlier noted that there are journals that are predatory or scrupulous. So, for instance, our own CHED, Commission on Higher Education, has provided us list of where to publish in local journals and international journals. You can also check online which of these international journals you can do your publication or you can have your publication. So it is high quality, as I was saying, because there is rigorous review process where you have to go through those in that particular journal, the procedures for submission, to acceptance, to revision, to publication. So if there is a guarantee that's for you that you get published, you have to perhaps rethink if that indeed is a journal you can take as reputable, because what we're emphasizing in the review process is about how this can be shared to a reader, a community of readers that pertains to scholars and researchers who would have the same understanding about what, how, and why of your research or of your paper. So definitely you're not going to publish in a journal that is not to share your views about or do not have the same tools or techniques in producing knowledge. So when we publish, we look for those that are peer reviewed. And it will, of course, depend on your area of study or your discipline. But there are, of course, journals that are multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary, where still are peer reviewed and of high quality. Then you can pick that out as your platform for publication. So how do we publish? I think we have to go back to the basic. Let's start with the parts of the paper or the I am ready or IMRAD convention. The IMRAD convention, I know you're familiar with, has these 5 parts: introduction, method, results, analysis. In the introduction, of course, you know what's expected of you to put in there to glue in reading your prospective reader. What this paper is about, I would say. No? And perhaps there is a one-liner intro to the whole part of introduction. This paper presents, this paper is, but that's important for you to work out because this will be your gate way to what the whole paper is about. Now, why this convention? It is because we, as a community of scientists or practitioners, have to agree on what to expect in the paper. What will be in the paper? So for instance, if you know that you're publishing in a counseling psychology journal, you know that the journal is about the application of psychology in treatment or intervention, um, and the principles that can be put to application. So in that journal, they expect that you're offering something new, or perhaps a critique of what this method or intervention modality you'd like people to consider, or practitioners in the field to take a second look about. So in the introduction, you're, as I said, gluing in your reader to that. The second one, of course, is more procedural, because method would make them understand that you've gone through a process of putting up evidence, for instance, of your claim, or finding solution to a problem. So in the method, you are actually giving your reader a glimpse on how you did it in putting up those evidence. There may be empirical evidence that you would want them to understand, or an explanation about. But then you will have to tell your reader that this is the way to that. So the method is our procedure, and actually retelling your reader how you did it, so that they know that what they'll read or they'll expect in reading is that this is done right and this is done well, so that your claim will be believable with the evidence you present or you offer. So the method, of course, differ in different fields. There would be variations in the how we put up evidence, in the how we use data, and how the data is obtained. For instance, given our situation today, difficult situation to gather data in the field. For instance, doing interview or doing focus group discussion is seriously limited. If you like, restricted because of the health protocol, and that we have not only to observe but to comply with this. But can we do a study still? In what we're doing now, for instance, we can conduct contactless um, interview through Zoom, for instance, or online, or devise a kind of questionnaire that would be user friendly for online um, survey, then this way we have to access information, gather data still, and come up with a study. Now, what does that suggest? It tells us that when we know what we're doing, we'll know how we'll do it given the conditions, whether these conditions would pose challenge. So the challenge would lead us to perhaps create new techniques, but still using the conventional methods, modifying perhaps how we can conduct interview. Nonetheless, we're doing it and reporting on how we are to generate evidence. So the method tells or paints a picture of how the how to or what was exactly done. In our field, it is important that we tell in the that section, we write in that part we call method, the steps even, how from we proposed a problem to how we draw out a hypothesis that we have to test. And also that we employ this to how we employed rather the method. If it is in the laboratory, then we tell our reader that this is so. Why am I saying reader? And I kept on saying reader. Remember, when we write not for our own, because we know it. We take the other who would be interested, a potential reader. So take that perspective. You're writing for a reader, not for yourself. So you would say, yeah, I know this, so I would not say this explicitly, but you will have to think of your reader. From writing your introduction to writing your discussion, as if you're talking to someone in person, similar to what I'm doing right now. And that will require some imagination. Imagine that you're talking to someone while he's going through your work or your paper, as he reads. And of course, you will ask, but I have questions still in my paper. Will I have to write that there? In a little while, I'll talk about that manuscript they will have to submit must just have this length, etc. Okay, so the third part of the IMRAD convention is results. Now, if your method is neatly presented, then that will lead the reader to advancing his perhaps hypothesis about your paper. or about your study or what could be interesting. So remember, when you write, you have to build on the interest of the reader. What will make me read through? Okay, so if you're looking for, let's say, a method that was that you propose to use in your study, and you expect that your reviewers, say in your thesis or dissertation, would have a question or would be um, doubtful about, because it seems that this is not so popular yet a method. And when in a study, as you read, for instance, in a published paper, you'd see that that method you're proposing is used for that published paper. Then you get the credibility for saying that in that paper, as you cite it later, this was used and the paper got published, meaning it got accepted by a community of scientists. That's also is the reason why it's important that we publish. So as I said, if you're doing innovation, that's your storyline, then you contribute um, to change, to innovation. If you think that this would be an original work, then that would contribute to inspiring perhaps those who would like to write about. So the results would have credibility with the method neatly presented and done right, because the results will depend on the method used to generate that evidence. So your claim will depend on that. Now, the results section is a presentation of what you found in your paper or in your study. And that would be very, very interesting for the reader. What's in the results? Do you offer new explanation? Is there a new way to understand something? Does this lead to more questions? What the results would lead them to is your way of making sense of that. And that's the analysis part. So when you do your analysis, or when you write your analysis, you're making it clear that given the data you have this to say about the results. And this will be important for your paper because in the analysis, they'll see if that matched the method, and if that matched, then you're saying my data supports, there is evidence of so and so. So how do you make sense of it all? And the last part of the IMRAD convention is discussion, where it's not, of course, very easy to put up, because here you're contribution is in the discourse already, no? Or in the conversation. What what is there for them to think about, to rethink about? So let's look into the details. They say that the devil is in the details, no? And usually when you submit, you begin with uh, thinking about what have I to seriously consider first in writing. In the IMRAD convention, I suggested that you have the introduction, the method, the results analysis, and the discussion. Okay, but how do you go about your work? The structure of the methodology. So um, in scientific journals, when we publish, um, you'll see that there are illustrations and graphs, because these are to capture already what the author is to communicate to the reader. So um, if they see, for instance, that you have your framework, you know, illustrated, say a mediation or moderation analysis, then you'll see that that shows what can be uh, read through in the paper. And as I was saying, in the method section, you looked at what the paper is in terms of its design, the plan of action that was carried out or that was implemented, for instance, in research. So if you indicated there, it's a qualitative study or a phenomenological study. No? Even in the introduction, you say it is so, and to the methodology, where you give a brief but concise description of how or what the plan of action was and how it was implemented. So you have to go back to that. So when you have the design of your study and you implemented it, that will feed to your results, to your analysis, and to your discussion. And then, of course, that the real task is in writing. Now, there is a difference between writing for a journal article and writing for a thesis or dissertation. The conventional thesis parts, as you know, may have 4 or 5 chapters, and you make elaborate presentation of each part. And in each part of that paper, you painstakingly have written every word to describe what is in that part of the thesis or dissertation. So if it is the section of method, you'll have to write everything about the method, including, for instance, the sample, the characteristics of the sample, etc., etc. And when you have that frame of mind in writing your thesis, no, and you're able to do that in your thesis and dissertation, imagine you can put this in brief in your manuscript, to be submitted for publication, because you will have to condense it. Now, you would say, but the words that I have written then are very important. Don't be clingy to those words. You let go of those that are used in the writing of your thesis or dissertation. Now, in the practice of scientific writing, there is what we call economizing on the words, so that we use or we choose and use, that's the key. We choose and use the words that are needed only to make a point. So you don't have to make elaboration. So when you say, for instance, this is the independent variable, you don't have to define what the independent variable is and how it's to be operationalized, or the measurements. If you say to measure, you use this, you don't have to describe why that is so, etc., etc. So as I'm saying, because you have already gone through a thesis and dissertation, for instance, for your degree, it would be not not as difficult to come up with a manuscript. And that is to write about what you have done through, for instance, in your research. Okay. Then, when you write, of course, you will have to be seriously engaged in your writing. I know you will have many questions about when it's best to write, how psychologically ready am I, or should I to begin to write, etc. But later we will see that it's in itself an exercise. So there you'll see write, and then go over. It requires discipline. That's why we're in various disciplines. It requires the discipline in your field of study. And if you're publishing in that community of readers, they know what is shared commonly, say terminologies, procedure, method. Okay. All right. I have some technical information for publication success. Is it consistent with journal publishing? 2, who are the readers of its publication? And 3, who are the reviewers of the journal? Now let's talk about each of these. As I said, when you're choosing or picking one publication journal, see to it that what you're going to contribute to their journal is consistent with their journal. Meaning, if it is in counseling psychology, for instance, then is the work in counseling psychology, is your research, or is the publication you have to make? You have to make is a journal, is consistent with the journal. I'm sorry. Secondly, who are the readers of its publication? So are they practitioners? Are they performers, for instance, in performance studies? Are they into to building a new science, say psychological science, or is it an emerging discipline? So consider the readers of its publication. And thirdly, and very important, of course, is the reviewers in the journal, because you will have to submit it to the reviewers for consideration, publication consideration. And usually, if you looked at the journal, you'll see the reviewers, and their names appear in the journal. Um, but of course, your work will be raffled to reviewers. If they're like 36 or 27 or 18 reviewers in that journal, it will be raffled to 3. And it may be those 3 that were selected to review your paper. So not all those reviewers would have to go through your work. Okay, so now let's go to the steps. Identify where to send your manuscript. For instance, CHED has its list of journals where you can publish your work, and they're clustered in disciplines, and has also a list of journals international that are not scrupulous and predatory. Or you can go online, as I earlier shown, to check if this is indexed, so that you'll know that you're submitting to a journal that is reputable. 2, check on the structure of the editorial team. Why is this important? To check on the structure of the editorial team. The associate, the managing, etc., and editorial chief, because that's the first layer of screening, where they'll see if at a glance the paper is to be accepted for publication consideration, or for review. So when it gets to the editors and accepted, you will be notified, for instance, that it will go through a process of review. But that does not, of course, would in any way suggest that your paper will be published. But that will tell you that it is to engage them in the process of reviewing the manuscript. Okay? Then, if you have checked on these things and you know that you can submit on that journal rather, you prepare your manuscript for publication. What will be your manuscript? As I earlier pointed out, in the consistency to journal publishing, considering the readers and the reviewers of the journal, when you write your manuscript for publication, you always have to bear this in mind, no? Because you're going to talk to the journal, the publisher, that is, the editors and the reviewers, and your prospective readers. Then you go through the editorial review process. What does that mean? When your manuscript is ready, don't dilly-dally, uh, don't wait for signs from heaven that you can submit your paper. Submit the paper to the journal. And the editorial review process will begin, of course, only if you have submitted. All right? All right. When we want to publish, we'll have to consider our manuscript for publication. That is in terms of length. Now, if you look at the journal where you perhaps considered publishing your work, you will have there provided in the journal what's acceptable for them to consider for publication in terms of the length of your manuscript. And length here is measured in terms of the number of words. It may run from like 5,000 to 8,000 words, and you put all in there for them to consider. So they usually subject it to an automatic word count. So that's the first thing in the screening process. So you check also if you're not exceeding the number, and they would suggest that these many words can be published. Why? Because there are many interested scholars to publish in the journal, and they can only have, let's say, 7 or 9 works to publish, given that limitation for publication, for instance, because that will, of course, entail cost for the publisher. When you make your manuscript, you looked at your rationale and conceptualization of the constructs. This has to do with the earlier point I suggested in the IMRAD. The introduction has your reason for doing research on this. In your method, you introduce the constructs for the study to be investigated on. And in the method, you suggest how that was observed, how it was measured, how evidence was generated. You know? And in my field, for instance, the measurement of that construct and um, who were involved in this study. And then from that characterization, for instance, of those who participated in your study, you ventured or you embarked on a study and implemented your research, where then you explicitly or expound on the way, the method of collecting data. So from there, if it is quantitative, you would say that you did statistics on this, and this is the statistics you use. And if that statistics is kind of sophisticated, you provide a thorough discussion on the statistical method employed, particularly that, for instance, we have newer methods of analyzing data, particularly those data that come from, say, big data. In big data design, when you can harvest data from, let's say, usage of a social media platform. So you report on how exactly this was done, or if you did meta-analysis, that would require statistics to explain your results. Or if it is qualitative, say if you did employ interpretative phenomenological analysis or IPA, or if you employed a case study, or you employed, say, a narrative approach, or even an indigenous method to generate data, so that you can come up with stories to support your claim. You provide that in data analysis part of your manuscript. Now, of course, if your design is mixed from the method to collection to analysis, then you'll have to provide, say, two subsections for quantitative and qualitative, so that you are able to indicate in the manuscript what made it a mixed design. And as I pointed out also earlier, when you write the manuscript, in the IMRAD, you provide for a discussion of results. All right, now what to do next? Now you have written your journal. I suggested that you begin to look for local journals. Or if you're to literally start on this enterprise of writing and publishing, or short of saying a scholarship, you may begin with with a local conference, because if there is, say, a local conference or a national conference, or even an international conference, they have a panel of reviewers also to look into the paper submission. And if you make one submission, it will be screened by that panel. And if there is a second layer of reviewers, then that will be submitted to that reviewers and checked on the merits of your paper if it can be presented in public, say in that conference. And that can be your first step if you're actually beginning to um, uh, be engaged in this exercise. No? So they may have proceedings. You may get published in the proceedings. No? And there are proceedings that may be obstructed and indexed as well. No? International conferences, for instance. Or in that local or national conference, they have a journal, and you may want to submit in their journal for publication. So that's your initial step to going to publication. Look for local journals and look for the ones refereed. The ones refereed suggest that the journal has reviewers and there are layers of review, from acceptance to review process to review decision, no? To revision, submission, and publication. So these layers of filter will help us develop our skills in both writing and thinking. So when you have looked for a local, when you have chosen a local journal that's refereed or obstructed, then, and you have your manuscript, of course, submit your work. No? Don't wait for some time, no? Because the more time that it gets there unattended by you, no, the more you get disinterested with it, no, and time will fly, of course, and you'd say this will not be anymore relevant or valid. So once you've completed the task of looking for this, submit your work. What to expect, of course. You may expect that your paper will be accepted. Acceptance is the first layer when you're notified that your paper is accepted for publication consideration. No? And then you will be told that because it is accepted for publication consideration, you will be given the comments and suggestions by the panel of reviewers. Read through the comments and suggestions, and go over those items. Don't be ego involved, as if attacking you in ways like asking questions or making clarifications about what is this, how did you do this, what's your basis for this, etc. You read through the comments and suggestions. and you must understand that they can have those questions, or they have those questions because they've gone through your manuscript. No? Value that comment and suggestions, because one point is that um, one got interested in reading your paper. Or if he's not interested, he went through reading it and found these things that you have to make clarifications. Now, when you're ready, revise accordingly and return the paper. That is, you will have to write your paper uh, a second time, no? A second time. If revision is accepted, you get published. You may have to revise a second time. Just do it. You want to get published. Okay, now, what to do next? Brace yourself for rejection. Of course, when you submit your paper, you have two answers, or you may get two answers, either of yes or no. Um, if it is yes, you're on your way to being published. If no, it means you have to rethink, reframe, perhaps resume reading, but don't throw your paper in the trash. Huh? Write again. Okay? Resume reading, writing, rewrite. And then submit. Okay? So, before I end, um, uh, wala pa naman akong do we have questions? Yeah, okay. Where do I read the questions, Mr. Jet? Sorry, there's a question from Jet. Do I have to answer now? Or before I end my talk, my sharing, um, the Hepner book, Writing and Publishing Your Thesis and Dissertation Research, a guide for students in the helping profession, the source primarily of my sharing this afternoon, can be useful to you, no? Okay, so do we have the questions?
Thank you, Dr. Javier. We really learned a lot from your extensive explanation and presentation of the important things to consider not only in publishing in a reputable journal, but also in the process of creating a journal article for publication. I'm sure it inspired our audience to pursue research and publish them in contribution to knowledge and information. So we can already start with the question and answer. We have our question from Mr. Jet Ramos. I have been rejected dozens of times, yet I got published last year. Is it normal to feel dejected if you get rejected?
Uh, the, yeah, there is a psychological process. Is it normal? What's the question? To feel.
Could you try again?
I'm sorry, my Siri is talking.
Yes, sir. The question is, um, being rejected dozens of times and got published last year. Is it normal to feel dejected if you get rejected?
Of course, you will have to feel sad about rejection, and it's normal to feel bad about the rejection. It's the the normal uh, coping, you know, and you have to feel bad about that. But um, as I suggested, you can rethink, you know, and that's a psychological ways to it. You know? um, you would I had my share of that rejection experience, no, in my many years of writing and submitting to journal articles, no. um, that's why I would say it's not that easy to submit to a journal, but um, it's part of the normal process, you know, psychological process to feel bad or feel sad. You know? But that can be transformed to some positive energies, uh, similar to what most of us are doing now during this period of the pandemic. For instance, there are positive diversions, no? Because we can't go places, we're confined at homes. No, we can attend, let's say, um, a seminar and acquire new skills, develop new skills. No, so when your paper is rejected, don't uh, ever uh, end your your desire to become a scholar. More so, we can go back to our paper and work on it now, and look for other journals to publish. Okay, here's a tip on that. No? So when you submit to a journal, no, of your choice, one, so that's your journal of choice one. No? There must be a second and third, but don't submit to all three at one time. No, it's simply unethical. Um, Submit to one, and when you get rejected, you'll have insights on. They will still have to comment on that, no, etc., etc. No? If there is no comment, then because it was rejected outright, then you'll have to go over your paper. No? Um, the way to do this, if it's your first time, is to ask several colleagues, no, to go over your work. No? Be humble enough to be critic. um, because they took time to read your paper, yeah, and then they'll have comments, no. As I said, don't be ego involved, you know, when they make comments and suggestions. And suggestions are to mean that this could be done this way better. Uh, I hope I rendered justice to that.
Doctor, there's another question from Miss Veronica Carillo from our faculty of Department of Language and Literature, Institute of Arts and Sciences. I think this is more of the strategic approach, no? Although you mentioned it a while ago. Is it advisable to seek first a help from an advisor before submitting the manuscript, or is it better to wait for the editorial team's feedback?
You can, uh, of course, when your paper is, if is this a dissertation or a thesis?
I think this is pointing out on a journal article, doc.
Yeah, but she was asking if she's to consult her advisor.
Advisor.
Yeah, so if the advisor is advisor in thesis or ad advisor for journal, don't get that. Anyway, there's a question. Let me see. Okay, for a while. Is it allowed to publish what's done during graduate school program? If it is a paper that done as a requirement for a thesis or dissertation, then you may have your advisor as your co-author. It depends on the policy of the university or the academic institution if it can be a co-authored publication. Um, then if you have to ask your advisor, well, if you have an advisor for your publication, for your paper, you may seek that advice for perhaps initial review, and that would be helpful because I think then um, your advisor would give you points on what to consider in writing. No? In a similar vein, I suggested earlier that you may um, confer with several colleagues, ask around what they may have to say about your paper. In the same way, you can ask your advisor um, if it's a thesis or dissertation, or if you have an advisor for your publication journal, then yes, you can do that. It's important, of course, that you have more people reviewing, reading your paper. That's the purpose of submitting it to peer reviewed journals, because your peers take note. It should be your peer, meaning you share common knowledge, let's say in the method and the terminologies and the researches and studies in your area of in your area of interest, because by then the inputs would be very, very valuable. So it's good that you seek out assistance in this manner.
Sir, Doc, there's another question from Mr. Reniel Rosales. Sir, how can we avoid predatory journals?
Okay, good. I know that there is a list of predatory journals. I don't know where exactly to access this, but there's a list of predatory journal. Now, how do you know if it is or it is not predatory? You can check that out online by way of checking if it is indexed in, say, science. Let me see. You can check that out in online as well. No? So I shared earlier key abstract indexing databases. If it's listed in there, then it's not predatory. If it is not there yet, perhaps applying for recognition, then be wary about. Um, so yeah, you can check out online uh, uh, a predatory journal. I hope that gets answered.
Sir, all right. So, thank you, Doctor. Due to time constraint,
Okay.
will not be able to answer all of the questions. I think if you have more questions, you can email Dr. Javier for further advice and insights. Now we'll be going to the next part. Now, I request everyone to open your cameras for picture taking. So we will have a picture taking. I think Miss Anne will be capturing all our image. No. May I request everyone to open your cameras and have your smile? Okay, Miss Anne, are we good?
Yeah, are we good? We're good na po. Okay. Ready? Smile. Next page po. One, two, three. Okay, thank you po.
Right, thank you. Also, let me remind everyone to answer our evaluation sheet. The link is posted on our Zoom page, no, for our webinar. So please answer our evaluation. And for our closing remark, may I invite Dr. Anna Nelia Humamil, Department Chair of Department of Psychology, Institute of Arts and Science.
Okay, good afternoon to all. Thank you. Truly, after hearing our resource person discuss meaningful, timely, and relevant ideas on how to publish in a reputable journal, I know that you share the same insights with me. The opportunities of doing or making our research paper better and raising the bar of excellence in our research work for the ultimate goal of every researcher, faculty, and even student researcher, which is to publish. There is indeed plenty to reflect upon, and if this is any way enhances our individual and collective contributions to the writing and publication of paper, then the webinar can truly be a success. So before we formally close today's webinar, allow me to share with you some of my learnings this afternoon. So what we are doing should be shared to others since it will foster understanding of ideas and things. So publishing will also lead to achieve a high level of success in a particular activity. And the data we gathered from research will be translated into professional practice. So published paper is a rich resource for academic community. So I've also learned that we should know where to publish since there are journals which are legitimate and there are predatory or scrupulous journals. So the list of high quality and peer-reviewed publications as well as predatory journals can be checked out online. That when we are writing, we have to consider our reader. We make our research interesting as if we are speaking to them. We should also take a paradigm shift when we select our paper to be published. Meaning, when we are used to writing thesis or dissertation, we should learn economizing words that we choose and use the words needed only. So when we publish, we should know that your paper is consistent with the journal publishing, the readers, and the reviewers of the journal. Lastly, please permit me to close the webinar by reiterating Dr. Javier's statement that in publishing your research paper, one must take little steps, which will be the first steps in developing one's skills in writing. So do not get frustrated when rejected, but according to him, rethink, reframe, resume reading and writing, rewrite, and submit again. Again, thank you and pleasant afternoon to all.
Thank you, Dr. Anna. Again, we thank you, or we thank Dr. Roberto Javier for sharing with us all his expertise and insights for publishing and reputable journal. Before we forget, we will be awarding our certificate to Dr. Javier. Let me read this certificate. Miss Anne. Far Eastern University Institute of Arts and Sciences awards the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Roberto Javier Jr., PhD, in his valuable contribution as a resource speaker during the webinar entitled Publishing Your Paper in a Reputable Journal, held on the 6th day of November 2020, signed by our department chair, Dr. Emmanuel Gonzalez, PhD, and our Dean, Rowena Capulong Reyes, PhD. So thank you again, Dr. Javier. And Thank you everyone for attending our webinar. Always keep posted for more webinars and activities of the department, and you're always welcome and invited. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.